Someone is doing this to you right now, and you have no idea. Not because you're not smart enough to notice, but because these techniques were specifically designed to operate beneath your awareness. They don't announce themselves. They don't feel like control. They feel like conversation, like kindness, like coincidence. Social psychologist Robert Cialdini spent decades studying the science of influence. His conclusion was uncomfortable. Most of the time, we are not the authors of our own decisions. We are responding to invisible architecture built by someone else. Today, we're going to make that architecture visible. 7 psychological tricks people use to control you without you ever knowing they were doing it. Pay attention. However, one of these will land on someone you know. Why you don't notice. Before we go into the tricks, we need to understand why they work. Your brain processes approximately 11 million bits of information per second. You are consciously aware of roughly 40 of them. 40, the rest, the overwhelming majority of everything you experience, is handled by unconscious processing systems. Systems that operate on pattern, habit, and heuristic. Systems that can be, and regularly are, exploited. Psychologist Timothy Wilson, in Strangers to Ourselves, documented how little access we have to our own mental processes. We believe we are making rational, independent decisions. We are often executing scripts we didn't write. This is not a personal failing. This is the operating condition of every human mind, and it is exactly the gap these 7 tricks exploit. The 7 tricks. Trick 1. The foot in the door. They start small on purpose. It starts with something reasonable, something easy to say yes to, a small request, a minor favor, something that costs you almost nothing. And then, gradually, the requests grow. And by the time they're asking for something significant, you've already established a pattern of saying yes. Psychologists Jonathan Freydman and Scott Fraser documented this in a landmark 1966 study. Homeowners who agreed to a small yard sign were significantly more likely, weeks later, to agree to a large, intrusive billboard on their lawn. The mechanism is identity consistency. Once we say yes to something, we begin to see ourselves as the kind of person who says yes to this, and we behave accordingly. In relationships, this looks like small boundary violations that get normalized, one at a time, until you can no longer remember where the line was. What this feels like. You look back and wonder how you got here. The answer is one small yes at a time. Trick 2. Intermittent reinforcement. They're unpredictable on purpose. They are not always cold. That would be easier to leave. Sometimes they are warm, generous, the person you fell for, and sometimes, for no clear reason, they withdraw. This unpredictability is not a personality quirk. It is the most powerful conditioning schedule in behavioral psychology. B.F. Skinner's research on reinforcement schedules showed that variable ratio reinforcement, rewards delivered unpredictably, produces the strongest, most resistant to extinction behavior. It's the same mechanism that makes slot machines addictive. In human relationships, when warmth arrives unpredictably, the brain treats it as a reward to pursue, not a baseline to expect. You stop asking for consistency. You start chasing moments. What this feels like, you keep waiting for the good version of them to return, and sometimes it does, just enough to keep you waiting. Trick 3. Strategic guilt. They make their choices your responsibility. You make a decision, a normal, reasonable decision, about your time, your plans, your life, and somehow, by the end of the conversation, you feel guilty for it. You haven't done anything wrong, but they've made you feel as though you have. This technique works through what psychologists call emotional attribution shifting, and are redirecting the cause of their emotional state from their own reactions to your behavior. I'm not upset. I just thought you cared about us. It's fine. I just didn't expect this from you. You do what you want. You always do. None of these sentences make an accusation, but all of them deliver a verdict. Researcher Gerard Parrott's work on guilt induction shows that guilt is uniquely powerful because it motivates behavior change without requiring argument. You don't need to be convinced. You just need to feel bad enough to comply. What this feels like, you start making decisions based on what will cause the least guilt, not what you actually want. Trick 4. Social proof manipulation. They use others to pressure you. Everyone agrees with me on this. Even your friends think you're being unreasonable. I talked to people. They all said the same thing. These statements may or may not be true. That's not really the point. The point is that they invoke the most powerful heuristic in human social cognition. If everyone else thinks this, maybe I'm wrong. Robert Cialdini identified social proof as one of the 6 core principles of influence. We are wired, especially in moments of uncertainty, when to look at what others are doing and thinking as a guide for what we should do and think. When someone manufactures or exaggerates social consensus, they are hacking this system. They are making you feel outnumbered inside your own life. The result is self-doubt, where self-trust should be. What this feels like. You stop trusting your own read of situations. You wonder if you're the only one who sees things this way. Sometimes you are, and that's okay. Trick 5. The DARVO flip. They become the victim when you speak up. You bring up a concern carefully, kindly. You've rehearsed it, and within 30 seconds, you're no longer the person who raised an issue. You're the person who attacked them. Psychologist Jennifer Freyd identified this pattern as DARVO: deny, attack, reverse victim, and offender. Deny the behavior happened. Attack the person who raised it. Reverse the roles, so the accused becomes the victim, and the person who spoke up becomes the aggressor. It is a technique of stunning effectiveness because it exploits your empathy. The moment they appear hurt, your concern shifts from your own grievance to their pain, and your original issue disappears. What this feels like. You came with a problem. You left with an apology, and you're still not sure exactly what happened. Forstum. Trick 6. Information control. They manage what you know. They don't lie outright. That would be too easy to catch. Instead, they select. They choose what to share, what to omit, what to frame, and what to time. This is called information management, and it is one of the most sophisticated forms of control because it leaves no obvious fingerprints. Psychologist Brad Sagarin's research on influence and deception shows that selective truth-telling is more persuasive than outright lying because it allows the target to feel. They arrived at conclusions independently. You were never lied to. You were just never given the full picture. And a partial picture, skillfully framed, can lead you anywhere they want. In close relationships, this manifests as knowing more about your life than you know about theirs, being kept strategically uninformed about things that would affect your decisions, finding out important things late or by accident. What this feels like? You realize the version of reality you were operating in was the version they built for you. Trick 7. Identity labeling. They tell you who you are until you believe it. You've always been sensitive. You're the type of person who overthinks everything. That's just how you are. These statements are not observations. They are installations. Psychologist Carol Dweck's research on identity and behavioral self-concept shows that labels, especially from people we are close to, become self-fulfilling. We act in ways consistent with how we believe we are. When someone repeatedly applies a label to you, too sensitive, too needy, too much, too dramatic. They are not describing you. They are constructing a version of you that is easier for them to manage. A version that doubts itself, a version that defers, a version that stays small. And over time, if the label lands often enough, you begin to wear it as truth. What this feels like, you start describing yourself using their words. You forget that you chose those words, or rather, that someone else chose them for you. What all 7 have in common. Look at each trick again. None of them require force. None of them require threats. None of them leave visible marks. They all work through the same mechanism. They use your own psychology against you. Your consistency, your empathy, your need for belonging, your trust in others' perceptions, your desire to be a good person. These are not weaknesses. They are the foundations of healthy human connection, and that is precisely what makes their exploitation so disorienting. The thing that was used against you is something you should never have to apologize for having. Psychologist George Simon, in Sheep's Clothing, calls this the central tragedy of covert manipulation. It turns your virtues into vulnerabilities, and it makes you question the very qualities that make you worth knowing. What you can actually do. Awareness is the beginning, but awareness needs somewhere to go. 1. Name the technique, not the person. When something feels off, instead of asking, "Why are they doing this?" ask, "Which pattern does this match?" Naming the technique creates distance between you and the emotional impact of the behavior. It moves you from inside the dynamic to outside it, even briefly. And that brief outside view is where clarity lives. 2. Slow down the yes. Most of these techniques rely on speed, a fast yes before you've had time to think, a guilt trip that needs to be resolved immediately, a social pressure that demands a reaction now. The antidote is a pause. I'll think about it. Let me come back to you. I need a moment. These are not conflict. These are protection. 3. Trust the discomfort. Your nervous system notices before your mind does. The slight tension after a conversation, the feeling of having agreed to something you didn't quite want to agree to, the sense of being smaller than you were an hour ago. These are signals, not proof, signals. And they are worth taking seriously. Neuroscientist Antonio Damasio's somatic marker hypothesis demonstrates that the body registers subtle relational threats. Before conscious processing catches up, you are not being paranoid. You are being informed. What to carry from this? Control that operates below awareness is the hardest kind to name, because it never looks like control. It looks like a relationship, a friendship, a family dynamic, a workplace that just feels a little off. And the people who couldn't name it didn't leave because they didn't want to. They stayed because they couldn't see the structure. They were living inside. You have just seen it. That is not a small thing. Knowing the name of what is happening to you does not require you to act immediately. It does not require you to confront anyone. It does not require courage, not yet. It only requires you to stop calling your discomfort your imagination. Because it isn't, it never was. If this reached something in you, share it with someone who needs this language. Subscribe. The next video goes even deeper. We'll see you there.